The story asks whether Giants fans should pump the brakes on Odell Beckham Jr. returning. The article frames the reunion idea as fan-driven buzz, not a confirmed move. The video should center on Odell Beckham Jr. reunion buzz. An NFL insider is warning Giants fans not to get too excited yet. Odell Beckham Jr. has name value, history with Big Blue, and apparent interest in returning. The core question is whether he fits what the Giants need right now. The story should not be treated as only nostalgia. The main debate is whether signing Odell Beckham Jr. would help the Giants, or be more emotion than impact. Supporting Story 1 is about former Giants receivers trying to return from major injuries. Supporting Story 2 is about the upcoming schedule release, giving fans a clearer picture of what kind of roster the Giants need for the 2026 season. The idea of Odell Beckham Jr. back in a Giants uniform is enough to get Giants fans talking. Fans are picturing one-handed catch highlights and a storybook reunion. One NFL insider is telling Big Blue fans to slow down. The article says the question is not whether Odell Beckham Jr. is a Giants legend. The question is whether bringing him back in 2026 would actually make the team better. Odell Beckham Jr. That's the name, that's the debate, and that's only Story 2. First, the Giants' injury context. Then, the insider warning. And then, the schedule angle that tells you what this roster actually needs. By the end of this video, you'll know if Big Blue should chase OBJ or walk away. Big Blue lock in. Because this conversation is not really about highlights. It is about roster fit, urgency, and whether the Giants can afford to confuse emotion with answers. Real talk before we dive in. Eagles fans act like they own this division, and too many national channels talk about Big Blue like we are background noise. Not here. If you want a channel built by Big Blue, for Big Blue, that goes straight at the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders, hit subscribe right now. Every sub is a flag for Big Blue Nation. And drop, "Let's go Giants," in the comments so the rivals watching this know who runs this space. Now let's get into Story 1, because this is where the OBJ debate actually starts. The first thing most fans skip over is the injury context. If you are talking about bringing back a former star receiver, you cannot separate the name from the body, and you cannot separate the body from the role. That matters here, because one of the support angles around this whole debate is former Giants receivers trying to come back from major injuries. That is not random. That is the warning label. When people hear Odell Beckham Jr., they hear history. They hear MetLife Stadium exploding. They hear that one-handed catch. They hear prime star energy. But this story is telling you to ask a different question. Would adding a former Giants receiver with that kind of history actually solve a current Giants problem? And that is the right question. Now, here's the truth nobody's telling you. If the conversation starts with memories, you are already behind. Big Blue does not need a museum piece. Big Blue needs usable help for the roster. John Harbaugh is trying to shape around Jaxson Dart. This offense needs pieces that match what the team is becoming, not what the fan base misses. That is why the injury angle matters so much. A return from a major injury is not just a comeback story. It changes snap count, role, separation, trust, and weekly availability. It changes whether a receiver is somebody you build into the game plan or somebody you sprinkle in and hope for flashes. And if that second category is what you are signing, then you are not fixing the room. You are decorating it. Personal opinion here. I think Giants fans need to be way more disciplined than emotional on this one. If the front office signs a former name because it feels good, and not because it gives Jaxson Dart exactly what he needs, that is a mistake. I'm not against a reunion in theory. I'm against pretending a reunion equals an answer. That's my read. If you see it differently, comment and tell me why. Because Story 2 is bigger, and this is where the temperature changes. Now, what most channels will miss is the key line in this entire package. An NFL insider is warning Giants fans not to get too excited yet. That is the hinge. Not a random fan. Not a nostalgia account. An insider. Somebody plugged into league thinking, signaling that this buzz is real enough to discuss, but shaky enough to cool down fast. And that tells me two things. First, the Odell Beckham Jr. reunion noise is strong because the name still carries weight. Second, the actual football case is not clean, or there would be no need for a public brake pedal. The stories give us the framework. OBJ has name value. He has Giants history. There is apparent interest in a return. But the real issue is fit, not sentiment. Fit. That means role. That means what kind of receiver the Giants need around Jaxson Dart. That means whether adding OBJ changes how defenses treat this offense, or whether it just creates headlines for a few news cycles. And that means whether this roster, as it stands, is one move away from feeling complete or one move away from getting distracted. Here is where I plant my flag. If the insider is pumping the brakes, Big Blue should listen. Not because OBJ is not a Giants legend. He is. The source brief says that clearly, and every Giants fan knows it anyway. But legends and lineup answers are not the same thing. This front office has to think about function, not feelings. And remember the exact core question from the story. Would signing Odell Beckham Jr. help the Giants, or would it be more emotion than impact? That is the whole debate. If the answer leans emotion, the move is wrong. Period. I'll say it. And half of you will want to fight me for this. In my opinion, bringing back OBJ would be overrated unless the Giants see a very specific role for him. Not a symbolic role. Not a reunion role. A real football role. If they do not have that mapped out, this becomes one of those moves fans celebrate first and regret later. Tell me I'm wrong. Now I want your take. Comment sign if you want Big Blue to bring OBJ back. Comment pass if you think this is more nostalgia than help. No middle ground. Make me defend my position. Quick reminder, if you're still here and not subscribed, you are Big Blue. Hit the button, because story 3 is the one that decides this whole argument. What's coming next is the real test. Not the name, not the emotion, the schedule. And this is where the conversation gets serious. Now, what you've really been waiting for. The story that flips the entire discussion. The one I told you about at the start. Here it is. The upcoming schedule release is not just content fodder. It is not a social media event. It is a mirror. It tells the Giants what kind of team they actually need to be. Because once that schedule lands, every soft roster debate gets harder. Here's why. Right now, fans can project any version of the Giants they want. They can imagine ideal usage. They can imagine storybook moments. They can imagine OBJ catching a touchdown at MetLife and the place going crazy. Fine. But when the schedule shows you the path through the season, the conversation changes from fantasy to demand. If the slate is loaded with physical secondaries, long travel, stacked stretches, or no breathing room between division games, then the Giants need durability, flexibility, and dependable roles. If the path demands layered receiver depth for Jaxson Dart, then the team has to ask whether OBJ gives you that in practice, not just in theory. If the schedule tells you this roster will be tested by the Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders in high-pressure windows, then every spot has to answer a simple question. Can this player help us survive the grind? Now connect that to the first two stories. Story 1 told you to think about major injuries, not memories. Story 2 told you an insider is actively cooling the buzz. Story 3 tells you why that matters. The schedule is about to expose whether this team needs a nostalgia move or a functional move. And I think we all know which one wins in a serious building. This is the strongest opinion I have in this video, so save the timestamp. In my opinion, the schedule release is going to make the OBJ reunion look smaller, not bigger. Once Big Blue sees the real path ahead, I think the front office will prioritize players who match workload, structure, and weekly dependability over a name that mainly wins the press conference. That is my take, and I know some of you hate it. Convince me I'm wrong. I'm listening. Now you have your answer to the question I asked earlier. If you think the name still matters most, comment sign. If you think the schedule reality should kill this idea, comment pass. If this analysis hit, like the video. That is how we keep YouTube pushing Giants breakdowns that actually go deeper than lazy headline talk. 3 stories. 1 picture. Here is what it all means together. The Giants are being handed a classic trap. Big name, big history, big emotional pull. But the real build around Jaxson Dart and John Harbaugh has to be sharper than that. The injury context warns you. The insider warning cools you. And the schedule release is about to stress test every fantasy move the fan base wants to make. That is why this debate matters. Not because OBJ is irrelevant. He is not. He matters because he forces Big Blue to choose what kind of team this is going to be. A team chasing moments or a team building answers. Listen, in the next video, I'm breaking down what the schedule release means for the Giants position by position and which roster weaknesses get exposed first once the full path is out. If you are Big Blue for real, you need that breakdown. Subscribe right now, turn on the bell, and make sure YouTube puts that video in your feed. That is how you stay ahead of Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders fans trying to run the conversation. And drop your final answer below. Sign or pass. But listen closely, one decision is still hanging over all of this. The front office still has to decide what kind of help this offense really needs, and whether a familiar name fits that mission. That answer has not landed yet. And outside this building, the division never sleeps. The Eagles will keep acting like the crown is safe. The Cowboys will sell hype. The Commanders will push their rise. So every Giants move gets measured against that battlefield. Big Blue, this is the fight. Stay locked, stay loud, and let's go Giants.